The idiotic and insightful investigations of Detective Ebeneezer Maisonette. The Phantom of the Masquerade. Written by Jamie A. Marsh. Read by Amy Penrose.
So happy to hear from you, Mr. Farley. I would be more than willing to add to your memoirs of your time with that detective. I will recall our time together as best I can. I believe it was sometime in the summer when I invited you and Detective Maisonette to our masquerade ball. My husband wasn't sure about inviting you both, as it was more for people of our own circle, but I thought it would add some amusement for the evening. Thank God you two did attend. The party started as expected. Guests enjoyed our selection of wines we had shipped in from Venice. We always loved to go to Italy in the summer. Mr. Barclay was introduced to us. Strange, sleepy fellow, I found. Not much of a conversationalist. He and his wife enjoyed the wine very much. It reminded them of home, as they had recently moved to London after living in Italy for many years. It wasn't long before Maisonette burst through the door. He swanned across the ballroom floor towards the band. You, Farley, stood near the door, looking rather embarrassed by the whole performance. Maisonette proceeded to take a violin from one of the band members and made circles across the room while playing. I say playing, that may be generous. The detective certainly made some sounds with the violin, but not really ones that anyone wanted to hear. Not unless they like the noise of what I can only describe as a dying cat. I thought it best, now that the atmosphere had turned silent and strange, to clap Detective Maisonette into stopping and approach him for a conversation. He threw the violin at a poor waiter, knocking him to the floor. "Detective, thank you for such an elaborate introduction," said I. "It was my pleasure," he replied, with a smug smile. I really think he thought he did a quality performance. You then joined us too. "Thank you for inviting us, Lady Radcliffe," you said. "Have you tried the wine? We shipped it in from Venice, you know." "I would be happy to try some," you replied. All of a sudden, as I was calling over a waiter with your wine, Mr. Barclay collapsed to the ground. The room screamed in shock at his motionlessness on the ballroom tiles. His glass of wine shattered beside him. "I think I'll pass on the wine," you added. Maisonette immediately jumped down to the poor man and, much to my surprise, slapped him as hard as he could across the face. "Dead!" he shouted to the room. More people gasped with horror. I'm not afraid to admit I was shocked. I couldn't move from my spot from the surprise. A death at my party. The scandal! The detective called you over and held up the shattered wineglass, still with a little left in the bottom. "Try this, Farley," he instructed. You took the glass from him carefully. "Isn't it poison?" "Yes, I should think so. That's why I wanted you to check." "I think I'll take your word for it." "Poison!" Maisonette screamed at the top of his voice. It echoed in the room. I think I can still hear it now. "No one is leaving this party." A man in a silver mask ran out from the back of the crowd. We quickly chased after him. Both of you bolted through, but my dress was heavy, so I could only give a light jog from behind. By the time I caught up with you, you were both panting on the empty balcony. "He disappeared like a phantom," you announced. "What are we to do, Maisonette?" The detective paced the balcony. London sat far across the hill in the night sky. He looked at the brickwork closely. This was the first time I noticed that his spectacles sat on top of his mask. He attached a set of small magnifying glasses to the side to look closer. "See here, Farley. A small scuff in the stone. This has only just been made, with some shoe leather. The phantom, as you called them, must have climbed up." "But that's a 20-foot drop. He couldn't have possibly gone over the balcony," you interjected. No, no, Farley. See the slight footprints along the top of the balcony that lead to this open window above us. Extraordinary, I announced. I was blown away by the whole thing. My husband then arrived. He had a temper on his face, I can always tell. I told you this sort of thing would happen if we invited these two, said he. Charlie, please, said I. Mr. Radcliffe, you said calmly. Sir Radcliffe, he replied with his nostrils flaring. I now have a room of people in sheer panic and a dead older gentleman on my ballroom floor. What do you suppose we do about that? Before anyone could reply to my husband's demands, we all got distracted by Maisonette climbing the balcony and trying to pull himself up through the open window. You, Farley, then got up onto the balcony to give him a leg up. Eventually, after an excruciatingly long process, Maisonette clumsily entered the window, where he picked up a cloak and a silver face mask from the floor, and presented them to us below. Sir Radcliffe, you need to make sure no one leaves this party. One of them is our killer. My husband promptly organised security on all the exits to the building to make sure the killer didn't flee before they were caught. He did try to explain to the detective that he thought it likely they had already gone. The guests of the party were moved from the ballroom in order for the body of the late Mr. Berkeley to stay where it was. Farley, you were with me, along with my husband and Maisonette. We had all removed our masks while we stood alone. I insisted on staying, as I thought it was only right that I should help with the investigation at my own party. My husband was less of a help. Now that our entire party has been ruined, can you please get on and work out what happened here tonight? My husband insisted. The thing I keep returning to is that everyone had the opportunity to slip poison into that glass before it was handed to Mr. Berkeley, so it doesn't narrow it down for us at all. Maisonette stroked his moustache in thought. If we can't narrow down the sequence of events through opportunity, then maybe we need to find a motive, said you. I don't see who could have done this. I only know him by name, but he was always talked about so fondly, I added. Who did he arrive with? You asked. His wife, I believe, said my husband. But will you get on with this? Then we must talk with her at once. Maisonette left the room at such a pace that most of us didn't see him leave. We brought Mrs. Berkeley to the drawing room. I was able to convince my husband to leave us to the investigation and return to entertaining the party guests. I was much obliged for letting me stay and watch. Mrs. Berkeley was in much distress over the death of her husband. The loudness with which she blew her nose was terrifying to me. Do you know of anyone who would want to harm your husband? You asked politely. Well, no, not really. We hardly know anyone in London. We haven't been back too long. I noticed an air of hesitation. Pray, tell us what you know. He did have a business partner. It was such a long time ago. Do continue. Well, they had a falling out over the financial situation of the company. But the next thing we knew, he went missing. Presumed dead while on a business trip to Peru. My husband never really believed he was dead, but we never heard from him again. Who was this ex-business partner of your late husband's? Charles Fisherman. Maisonette didn't seem to be paying much attention to the conversation with Mrs. Berkeley. He was too busy searching our sitting room, taking books off the shelves and looking through the various objects we had around. Are you paying attention? You asked him. To every word, Farley, Maisonette replied while tapping the stone wall. Then what are you doing? Have you ever noticed anything strange about the design of this house? The detective addressed me. Nothing I have ever considered, said I. Not even this? With that statement, he slotted his umbrella into a very small gap in the stone. It made a small click, and the wall slid away. Behind, I could see a dark passage I had never seen before. This will be how our phantom got away. I only noticed it due to the fact that it had been open within the last hour, he announced. It was decided then that the three of us would take this route to see where it led. I fetched us some candles and guided Mrs. Barclay back to where the guests were now. The passage was dark apart from the candlelight. The stone floor was uneven, and I found myself having to balance to not trip. Cobwebs lay across the top, so I was careful not to get any in my hair. Finally, Maisonette at the lead found the exit. Leaving the tunnel, we appeared behind a panel in the corridor next to the open window. We then proceeded to the music room, where the party had continued. Inside, everyone was talking to one another. I was pleased that the evening festivities were able to continue, under the circumstances. My husband handed me a glass of wine when we entered. "Did you bring your revolver?" I heard Maisonette ask you quietly. I found this an odd request in the situation. You nodded in reply, and passed it to him secretly, so as to only reveal to me the exchange. I had no idea of the next move that he was about to make. Had I any idea then, maybe I would have suggested a different course of action. As it stood, Maisonette dramatically pulled the gun on Mrs. Barclay. The room parted without hesitation. "Will someone stop him?" Mrs. Barclay screamed. "I'm going to shoot this woman, unless someone comes forward in her defence," Maisonette announced. The room fell silent. The gun was still pointing at the helpless Mrs. Barclay. I didn't know what to do. I didn't think it fair that this poor woman should be made to suffer after the loss of her husband. My heart was racing. "I will do it." He cocked the gun, ready. Unexpectedly, for me, my husband stepped forward. "Let her go," he ordered. "And why would you ask me to do that?" "I don't follow you, sir." "Would it have anything to do with your connection to this woman?" "Detective, surely, we only met this woman this evening," I exclaimed. "Is that true? Or did your husband, in fact, meet her previously, in Italy, on one of your holidays?" "So it seems you already know, Detective," my husband replied. I didn't know what to say. I stayed silent in the corner from the shock of the whole thing. I never for one moment suspected him of meeting another woman when we went away on holiday. I think the room felt relieved when Maisonette finally lowered the gun in order to continue talking. "I suspected the phantom was you when you arrived on the balcony. You had a distinctive silver glitter on your jacket and dust around the ankle of your trousers. This then led me to try and find the secret passage you must have used to get around the house so easily." "Well done. That is all correct." "But why did he do it?" you asked. "I can only add conjecture, but the way I see it, Sir Radcliffe must also be Charles. Charlie, fisherman. The disgruntled business partner of Mr. Barclay from long ago. It was such a long time ago that I had almost forgotten my old life. It all ended so badly. I'm sickened to admit that I was courting Mrs. Barclay behind her husband's back." The room gasped in horror at the idea. I fell into a chair. I placed my glass on the side as I felt so faint I couldn't drink any. "I was so ashamed of what I had done that when Mr. Barclay discovered the truth and planned to turn my whole career to ruins, I found the best way out was to fake my death in Peru. So, you must have been delighted when, after all this time, you stumbled across Mrs. Barclay in Italy while on holiday. Oh, yes. It was like we never parted. I didn't want to leave. Every time I had to return to London, I just wanted to get back to Italy to see her again. Soon, our trips to Italy became every summer. But it wasn't enough for us. It was my idea, Mrs. Barclay interrupted. If we could get out of our marriages, then we could finally be together in Italy. Charlie came up with the plan to use the Masquerade ball from our time in Venice. Venice was always our place. And here she was. This other woman is talking about my Charlie in this way. I changed my mind and retrieved my glass from the side. Just as I was about to take a sip, bang! The glass shattered in my hand. I looked over to see that Maisonette had shot it with the revolver before I had a chance to put it to my mouth. You, Farley, ran over to the broken bit and sniffed one of the bigger shards. Poison. You saved my life, I gasped. And you, I addressed my husband, with a finger towards him. You! I approached him in such anger that I slapped him with everything I could muster. I thanked the guests, and you two for the evening, and everyone went home. Over the next few weeks, I enjoyed watching my adulterous, murderous husband stand on trial for his crimes, along with the wicked woman who planned the whole thing with him and tried to take my marriage from me. My husband hanged for his crimes, and I was more than glad to see him go. And that was the story of the evening in which we met. I hope I didn't miss any of the details. Please don't ever hesitate to write to me again.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to help bring Detective Ebeneezer Maisonette's next on-screen adventure to life, please check out our GoFundMe for the upcoming short film featuring him. And if you want to explore even more of his world, the book version is now available on Kindle and Amazon. Thanks again for being with us. We can't wait to share more soon.